Welcome to the Real Estate 401k Show. Here are your hosts, Ryan Gerdes, Mike Weinstein, and Justin Frederick, helping you build a legacy of wealth through real estate. Powered by the Recon Group at West USA and the Frederick team with Fairway Mortgage. NMLS number 625918.
So the thing that consistently baffles my mind and the conversations that I have with dozens of people every single week, there are those, in my opinion, that get it. And then there are those that don't quite get it, and they're waiting. Mm-hmm. We're waiting, and we're and really it's all around interest rates. And I read a survey a while back that the average consumer who is on the fence waiting to jump into the real estate game is waiting for rates to get to about 5.5%. So if you're waiting, we're going to go into the three things that you need to do right now to prepare for when rates do jump. So the first one is I would start saving. If you have enough cash right now to buy a home, you're going to need a lot more cash if you wait till rates drop to 5.5%, 5%, 4.6%, guys.
Yeah, because you're going to have to compete with everybody else that's doing the same thing with a lack of inventory, right? I mean, we don't have much inventory out there, and the statistics show that builders have stopped building as many properties since 2009, dramatically, like a third of the properties that isn't there a statistic out there showing that we're about 1.6 million?
We're 1.6 millions underbuilt. I mean, we're shy. We're 1.6 million homes under what we need. 700,000 of those are homes for purchase. The other 900,000 representing the shortfall are rental homes.
Mm. And the numbers that we were going over last week, we're building less homes than we were building during the World War II era.
Yeah.
When they were rationing for war and they were like really constraining everything back. You had to put in for a lottery to get gas or something like that back. I don't know. I wasn't living around those times, but I mean that's
you're so cute.
But no, I mean like we're sort of looking at the numbers and I'm like, how is this? How are we keeping up here? Now I know that we've had surges in the past that's kind of spilling over. So it's not like we can't home people, but there's a lot more people living under one roof, and there's a lot of people that are just scrambling for housing. So saving, going back to your point, I think that you need to be extremely strategic as far as how you're budgeting your household. I think that if you are on either a fixed income or a W-2 to income or some type of income that isn't reflective to what inflation or the market is, then you're going to have to get really lean and really sock away a lot of cash.
So do you remember a couple of years ago we had this thing called COVID?
Mm-hmm.
Oh
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Almost forgot about it.
And we all remember that
Where's that button?
We all remember that 2-year frenzy where a house goes on the market by the end of the weekend. There's 15, 20 offers. People are now having to pay over appraised value just to buy a home. My projection is if we see rates drop to 4.6, which some economists are predicting for the end of next year, but even maybe if we only drop to 5.5%, that's what I mean. You better save cash because the houses are going to be more expensive than they are today. So your down payment increases. And then if you get into those situations now where you've got to make up a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 shortfall based on the purchase price and the appraised value, this is what's at risk.
Right. And like even now, you can still find deals out there where sellers are paying some, if not all, of the closing costs.
That's point number two, pal.
Yeah.
Well,
that's point number two.
I want to ask you.
It still has to do with how you manage your cash.
Yeah. I want to ask you guys a question, though. So before the rates started going up, after COVID, all that, we were still in a buyer's frenzy. What's the most you saw a home go over ask price with your clients out there while you were bidding on properties? What's the most you saw somebody overbid on an asking price, and what was the purchase price?
I don't.
Gosh,
I'd have to go
there's one that
back.
jumps into my head. We listed it for 400, went for 480, and so that's that's a 20% over list price, purchase price,
And
that went
obviously,
cash.
it went cash.
It went
So it
cash.
didn't even have an appraisal or
Nope.
anything like. Yeah, I mean, we were almost every property the buyers were waiving the appraisals on and just coming up with the difference. It was
But for me, I think that's the biggest percentage jump because I remember seeing a number of them where they're in the 900s and millions and whatnot. They were going maybe 100,000 over, but at that point we're talking 10 to 12% over,
Sure.
which we saw that pretty
Frequently.
frequently. But 20 I think was the biggest jump for me.
okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because the last 3 transactions that I was personally part of, and this is great news for our listeners, is the last 3 transactions went for underappraised value. We were able to negotiate that. During that buyer frenzy, I didn't have that kind of juice. I didn't have that kind of mojo. None of my clients were.
No.
Everybody was overpaying just based on that's what the market was doing. But there's a lot of strategies that go into it. And if you want to learn how to make your money work, you want to learn about how to overcome some of these challenges that are really, in my mind, mostly mental. And you'd like to strategize with one of our real estate wealth managers, go ahead and text the word money to 623-AZ-RECON. That's money to 623-AZ-RECON. And so segue into point number 2, which Ryan started it. But right now, I'm not going to say every single, but just about every seller is prepared to make seller concessions, help pay for the buyer's closing costs, help buy down that rate, and so forth. It's just our market right now. It's just our industry right now. So if we wait, you're going to have more cash because you're going to be paying for your own closing costs. But it's not so much of the extra cash you need; it's what you're leaving on the table.
Well, and so Justin will be able to speak to this because even when those times there's ways to basically allow your rate to help you with closing costs, but when we're dealing with that type of competitive market, there's such slim margins that because you're already paying significantly above what the appraisal value is, you can't afford to take a higher rate to adjust for lender paid closings or something like that. And I'll let you get into that a little bit more specifically, but it's one of those things where a lot of people just don't take into account the fact that you can finance a lot of these things right now, just like with a builder. You can finance your upgrades. You can finance, better cabinets or better flooring or whatever. But once you get starting too loosey-goosey on it, then the appraiser comes in and says, nope, you're going to have to start coughing up some extra cash. Right now, we're not dealing with that. Basically, anything that you throw at it, we have the comps to support it. Now, that's starting to balance off a little bit, whereas about 6 months ago, we were starting to see a lot of things come in significantly under appraisal value where we could actually go in there and be very creative with what we did with our money and how we financed it, where now all that creativity gets to go on the seller side, not on the buyer side.
Yeah, so what Ryan's talking about as far as using an interest rate to pay for your closing costs, we would just basically take a higher interest rate, which would give us premium pricing, meaning that it would actually pay you money back towards your closing costs, where it's kind of the opposite of paying points. So it's like right now, it's very common for people to want to buy down their interest rate to get a lower interest rate in order for their monthly payment to be sustainable. You would just take a higher interest rate to get those costs back to you. But I also want to bring up a good point. With when we're in a market like this with no closing costs and needing more money, you also got to think about repairs. You're not going to have sellers paying for repairs possibly.
That's a great point, bro.
Yeah, and I feel like it's pretty common for $2,000 in repairs, maybe $4,000 in repairs right now. We're seeing those come on our in addendums in the form of seller concessions, paying more closing costs, paying for that rate buy down. Whereas in the future, when things do pick back up, you got to be aware that might not happen, and you might have to either walk away or just take care of those problems yourself.
We should go down a little rabbit hole with that because it's not just with rates. I mean, like, think about the Debbie Downer COVID, right? Like, you couldn't walk into American Furniture Warehouse and buy any furniture. It was always 6 weeks out minimum, right? Some of them were 6 months.
So, yeah.
Where right now, I can't tell you how many transactions are going through where the seller's like, we'll sell this furniture to you for pennies on the dollar.
Yes.
And 2 years ago, it was like, I'll go ahead and pay you, almost 15% what retail brand new would cost just because I have no way to furnish the dang thing or get work done because contractors were 6 months out. I mean, like, this is true.
That's a good point.
It's more than just the real estate market that's affected. It's everything, all the little ancillary type of things that you want done, whether it's landscaping, furniture, so on and so forth. Like, you're really just stuck in a pickle. And guess what that is? That's more cash out of pocket.
Yeah, if you're a seller, you got to be careful what you have on the wall and what you have laying around while buyers are shopping, because there's a good chance they're going to ask for it if they
something nice.
They want that gun safe. They want that. They want that piece of artwork. And you're like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, and sellers are doing this, and sellers are making so many concessions because our market dictates that. They have to. When rates drop to 5.5% or lower, sellers will no longer have to do that. And if you want to understand a little bit more about the lending process and rates and how to leverage these things and how to take advantage of what sellers are giving away right now, all you got to do is text the word money to 623-AZ-RECON. That's money to 623-AZ-RECON. Third thing, if you're waiting, what you need to be doing right now is taking inventory of your credit and protecting your credit, improving your credit score, and working on your credit score. Now, before we started the big show, Justin, you said that really the optimum is a FICO score around 760.
760. It used to be 740, but with all the loan level pricing adjuster changes that happened early this year, 760 is now the top tier, and that will ensure that you get the best interest rate. So you want to make sure that your credit cards are paid down and you're paying your balances on time, because that's going to optimize your credit score and give you the best interest rate and closing costs possible. It makes a dramatic difference with those loan level pricing adjusters if your score is even in the low 700s. 2-3 years ago, your score's in the 700s. You're basically getting the same as somebody with an 800 credit score. You were barely penalized. Today, that's a different story. And a lot of those people we put into FHA loans. I
was actually going to bring up FHA loans as a fourth item, because if interest rates drop,
right?
If you're a first-time home buyer, you might want to seriously consider getting into the market now, because if we have another buyer frenzy, that's what we saw. We saw FHA buyers get pushed out of the market because sellers did not have to entertain a FHA contract
and VA and down payment assistance, because when you had both VA and FHA have clauses in their loan terms that say they do not have to buy a house, that the appraisal doesn't come in for the purchase price, and that loan term trumps the purchase contract. So even if you put that you waive an appraisal on a VA or an FHA loan, they can still back out. So that's why our sellers were getting away from those. Also, with the down payment assistance, if the appraised value comes in low, the sellers know that down payment assistance people, they don't have the extra funds typically to come up with for an appraisal shortfall. So if you're competing with others, most likely they're going to choose another contract.
And while it may or may not be true, FHA and VA appraisers have been stigmatized with the reputation of being very conservative on their numbers. So if you're a buyer and you know that there's 20 other offers behind you, and you won the contract strictly because of your purchase price, and you don't have anything above your either 3.5% in FHA or 0% down with VA, then you're going to have to come up with that difference, or they wash out the contract, goes on to the next buyer, and then guess what? You're doing the same dang thing over again. So buyers in those situations are kind of rooting for the higher appraised value, whereas right now, more often than not, we're using a lower appraisal to use it as a negotiation tactic. Mm-hmm. So if it comes in low by $10,000, then we can conceivably walk in there and say, "Hey, look, John Q. Seller, you wanted $700, but it came in at $690. we're gonna need to either find some common ground here, or you're gonna have to come down to the 690 in order for us to perform, or you can put it back on the market and find another buyer. Now, does it always work out just like that? No, but we're seeing that more and more often these days. And I thought the third point is that if they got off the fence now, they wouldn't have to listen to our "I told you so" episode. when, like you get to skip that day. You don't have to listen to that pod where we sit here and tell you "I told you so," because guess what? We are not above that.
Yeah, I'll just wrap it up with personal anecdote. My wife and I, we recently bought a property out in Queen Creek that we turned into an Airbnb. Contract price was $425. Appraised value came in at $492. In addition to all of that, I got the seller to contribute 2% in seller concessions. So I mean, my closing costs were incredibly minimal. Now, I took it in the pants a little bit on the interest rate. Mm-hmm. That's okay, because if I got the great interest rate at 5.5% when they drop, that deal is no longer available.
You wouldn't have got that asset for that price.
And it allows future creativity. So when you do refinance, or if you need to take control of some of that equity, you can use it to find other opportunities.
Justin and I already talk.
Yep.
Already talk. All right. Well, if you're looking to strategize, you're trying to determine what you should do. Especially if you're in that first home buyer market, and what's an FHA loan, or whether you would need to do an FHA loan. We want to have a conversation with you. We want to introduce you to our team of real estate wealth managers, and probably, and more importantly, introduce you to Justin and his team. All you got to do is text the word money to 623-AZ-RECON. That's text the word money. Man, I'm botching this today.
Man, look at you.
Text money to 623-AZ-RECON.
Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate 401k Show. If you want more information on how to build wealth, click on the link or text us at 623-297-3266. That's 623-AZ-RECON.